Hi guys, it's Kelly Latevola here, and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we're going to be using the Piece of Cake set, the Fluttering Hearts Stencils, the Sweet Treats set, and then I showed you the Up, and Away. I thought maybe I was going to use that little heart banner. I didn't end up using it. So here's pretty much what happened with this card. We are going to be talking about learning how to color glitter with Copic markers, but that's at the end of the video, much closer to the end. So if you're interested in that portion, just skip ahead. But so pretty much what happened here is I didn't have any mojo. I sat down to make this card 3 different times, and 3 different times I could not come up with something that I liked. Like nothing was coming in, just nothing was transferring from my brain to the card, and probably because I didn't have a whole lot of good ideas in my brain. Just this particular time I didn't, which is why you'll see that these masks are already used. So here's what I do. I think I've told you guys this multiple times before. When I'm having trouble with my mojo, I go back to the things that I love. So what do I love? I love coloring. I love rainbows. I love one-layer cards. So that's where I went. And so I had already had the Piece of Cake set out on my desk, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be cute to do like a rainbow of cupcakes? And so that's how we got a rainbow of cupcakes. That's pretty much just what happened. Here, in the set, there's like almost like a muffin top, and then the cupcake like icing top, which is the one I'm using here. They don't stamp, because obviously there's that photopolymer in between them, so they don't connect when you stamp them. But I was totally cool with just filling that in with a pencil, or I'm sorry, with a pen, rather than having to cut and mask each individual portion. So I just stamped them as a whole for my masks and on my card. And then that way I wouldn't have to do, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 different pieces, 6 tops and 6 bottoms. And so instead I just cut out 6 whole cupcakes. But, so in order to get that one layer look, I am staggering them. I stamped 3 up front and then 2 like in the middles behind. And I really just, like I said, my whole goal here was to kind of push past that creative block I was having, so that I could, move on to the next card design. And I think sometimes a lot of people can't push through that block, or they don't know how to push through that block. And so since I have been card making for companies and for teams and things like that, I have had to find different ways to push past it. When it was a hobby, and I didn't have a YouTube channel, and it was just me in my craft room, making cards by myself. There was really no expectation to produce anything. Side note, we're going to go into the ink blending here, and I just wanted to show you that I did mask off the bottom of it so that none of the ink blending would get on there. I chose to do oxides because they're a little bit softer, and I wanted there to be a clear differentiation between the Copic coloring of the cupcakes, which will be much bolder, and the background. So I just picked colors, yellow, orange, pink, purple, blue. So basically I substituted my pink for my red, and I'm fine with it because I'd much rather have pink than red. And then I'm just going to take up the color that the cupcake's going to be just slightly above it. I'm not using a ton of color. I'm not trying to get a lot of saturation. I'm just putting a little bit of color down because I am going to go over it again once I have my stencil in place. So this is really just like first layer of color kind of situation. But anyway, so before this was a hobby, I would just move on to the next hobby. I had like 18 hobbies. Like I would go through a phase where I would read, and I would go through a phase where I would cross stitch, and I would go through a phase where I would card make, and I would go through a phase where I would scrapbook. That's not true. Once I found card making, I never went back to scrapbooking. I tried once, and it was excruciating. I was like, what do I do with all this space, all this 12 by 12 space? So like I would just move on to the next thing, whatever the next thing that kind of piqued my interest was. And since I started committing to other people to produce cards in whatever light that is, I have had to find ways to kind of push back that creative block. And it's always worst for me, like January, February, March, heading into spring. Those 3 months, I don't know if it's like seasonal card depression or what it is, but I'm on the struggle bus the whole time. So anywho, find something that you love, that you know that is like your go-to thing, and then do that and see if it helps push you onto the next card or the next idea. I've already made a card since this one that was different for me, and so this really did help me kind of break that up. Here you can see the background that I created with the Fluttering Hearts Stencil. I used the smaller of the two that are included in that set. And then, this card is all about the bling, all about the shimmer, all about the shine, the glitters, pretty much all the things that I love. And so I'm going to spatter this onto the background while the cupcakes are still masked. So it's really just on top of those hearts, that perfect pearls. So I don't know, I guess as far as story time goes, well, you know what, let me tell you just a little bit about the card first before we get into any kind of story time. There's a lot of sped up coloring in this, and I will for sure explain to you the coloring of the glitter when we get to it. Here in the beginning, I wanted my cupcakes to be like a white or a vanilla cake, and here's where I tell you guys all the time, like, don't give up if something doesn't go your way. You're going to find out that these W grays don't go my way at all. It looks terrible. It just was not the right color combination for this. So I tried it and it didn't work. And then so I tried something else, and then that something else worked. And then I came back to the first one and fixed it. Like, if at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. To quote Aaliyah, God rest her soul. If any of you are my age, you will totally get that reference. Anywho, so then once I go through the coloring, you're going to see that I did have to speed up parts of it. It was just necessary for how much coloring is on this card, and why I did what I did with the coloring. So, what has been going? Oh, I did mention in my other video that Nathan had been sick. So, let me paint you a picture of my day, shall I? That sounds like that will be a really super good fun time. So the other day, I was working day shift, which is already like level 5 nightmare for me, because I don't like day shift. I don't like getting up early. I don't like having to wake up to this blaring alarm, and stumbling around half asleep, feeding the dogs, letting them out, wiping their paws, all of that goodness. But nonetheless, I'm on day shift, because if I don't work day shift, I don't get to see my son in the evening. So just, all of my decisions are based on him. And so sometimes that means I have to work day shift. So I'm trying to think about what happened throughout the whole day. I go to work. Everything's like basically pretty normal. We're relatively busy. The guys are writing quite a few tickets, telephone calls, all that jazz. I had gotten my oil changed on Monday. This was on Wednesday. I got my oil changed on Monday. And I have a wonderful gas station, like service center that's right across the street from me. And, back to the card. So here I'm darkening up the 2 cupcakes that are in the back to kind of push them a little bit further into the background. There would be more shadows there. Since I'm doing a central light source, like from the front, so that they would be darker in the back. But so I have a wonderful service place that's right across the street from me. They store my winter tire or summer tires when I have my winter tires on, and then they flip-flop them for me, and they'll hold my, I'll be able to drop my car off in the morning when I go to work and pick it up, and it's right across the street, and it's very convenient. So anywho, I took it there for an oil change. I left work at 1 o'clock. I forgot to pack lunch because I was running late this morning. So I was just going to go to Panera and pick up like a quick half sandwich. And so I get in my car to go to Panera, and my check engine light's on. So I'm like, what the hey? So I call on my way to Panera, hey, I just had my oil changed, and my check engine light's on. And they're like, okay, bring it back. Can you drop it off after you're done getting your food? And I was like, yeah, that's no problem. So I get my food. I go to the service center, I drop off my car, I gather up my purse, my coffee, my food, walk across the street, and it's like a main road to go back to work. So I'm going back to work. There is people who are consistently calling. We're having some issues with a tow release. We have certain policies in place that people don't like. When you are driving under suspension, you have to have 2 people to get your vehicle out of the impound. You have to have the title or current registration. And then there's a $25 processing fee. And there's people who want to argue about this all the time, all day, every day. There's people who want, I don't need 2 valid drivers, I'll take an Uber. Well, our policy was written in whatever, 1990. So it doesn't allot for Ubers in there. And typically we won't turn them over to somebody with an Uber anyway, because we need to see that there's somebody to drive them to their car and somebody to drive their car home. But anyway, here's how the glitters came about. We're going back to the card. The glitters came about because if you can see on this yellow one, I kind of double stamped it. I smudged the right hand side, and I think that's because there was still ink on it when I was placing it. So how the glitters came about was out of necessity to cover up the stamping faux pas that I already had. So we talked about that, don't give up on something. It's not ruined. Keep working on it. That's what happened to me here. At this point, totally invested. I am not starting over again. And so I decided to make them glittery cupcake holders to mask that. As far as the shading goes, you can see here, I'm adding shading to the bottom of each layer, and then working from lightest to darkest back out to lightest. As far as the cupcake holders go, I am leaving the lightest edge on the left-hand side, adding shading to the right-hand side. If you're very, very comfortable with alcohol markers, or if you're coloring them in another medium, you could probably add shading to the left and right-hand sides, but I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to leave a highlight because I am very heavy-handed. Even though we're going to speed up the process now, I will still slow it down to show you the color combinations. Feel free to pause it if you're not sure, or you can follow the, you can head over to the blog because I have my favorite Copic colors listed there, and that's what I almost always use, honestly. I don't branch out too much. So anyway, there's this woman in the lobby, and we're going back and forth about her tow release. There's another person who comes in because they need to report a motor vehicle accident. While I'm in the sergeant's office talking to them about this tow release and whether or not we're going to let this Uber take it, there's another person who comes in, and one of the detectives hands me a shoe, this New Balance shoe. And he was like, hey, I can't just leave this in the lobby, but can you put this can you put this on the desk until they get an officer back here? And I was like, what's up with the shoe? And he was like, I think there's meth in it. And sure enough, there's a little bag, and what have you. So I'm dealing with the meth shoe and the tow release and the possible accident in the lobby, all at the same time. I'm also trying to enter in these copious amounts of tickets that have come in from traffic details, and we have one particular officer on day shift who just hustles tickets all day long. I mean, it's just, I don't understand. It's what he lives for, I guess. I'm not really sure. I think he can't stand to not be busy, honestly. So all of that's happening. The girl who's going to relieve me comes in. Now we have a 2-hour overlap. So she and I are sitting there talking. I'm entering the tickets, all these things, blah, blah, blah. Phone rings. And I see that it's a number from the city that I live in, not the city I work in. And so I answer the phone, and they're like, hey, it's, the nurse over at the elementary school. And I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, well, Peanut came down because he said he had a sore throat. And I was like, he's got strep, because he had gone to a birthday party for his cousin that weekend before. So now this is Wednesday. He had been at a birthday party on Saturday. And then we found out on Monday that his cousin confirmed had strep throat. So I know that's what he's got. And she's like, it's at the end of the day, so I don't know if you want to come get him or if you just want him to ride out the end of the day. At this point, we had 30 minutes until school was just completely over. And so even if I left work right at the time of this phone call, I still would not have made it there to pick him up in time at 3:30. So I tell My partner, listen, I'm leaving. I got to go get Peanut. I call his pediatrician. They can get me in about 40 minutes. So I'm going to peace out of work. I call my mom and I'm like, hey, can you tell Dad when he picks up Peanut to either bring him to the house or meet me at the doctor's office, which is about 10 minutes from my house. And so I was supposed to teach that night. Like, my mom and dad were going to keep him because I had to teach college that night. Well, clearly that's not happening now. So I'm in the process of packing up my stuff. I'm trying to call over to the college to let them know that I'm not going to be there, that my son is sick. And they were super understanding about it, probably because there was another instructor that was scheduled with me as well. So there wasn't a need to find coverage. She would just have to go it alone. And so I walk in the back, I tell Eric, hey, listen, Nathan's got strep, I'm out of here. He's like, okay. So getting my stuff, all, purse, all of my items that I will be taking home with me. Plus this is my last day working that week. I had Thursday and Friday off. And then I walk out the door, and do you know what I find, people? What I find is I have no car because my car is still across the street getting its check engine light checked out. So now I'm holding all of my items in the parking lot, and I'm like, oh my Lord, I have no car. So I, again, walk back across the street. Thankfully, it was done. It was, I guess, a code for an oxygen sensor. They said they reset it, but if it continued to be a problem, I would need to bring it back in, which my check engine light came on day before yesterday, so clearly I'm going to have to take it back in. But so I get all of my items loaded up. I've called off the college. My mother calls me and says, Dad's just going to meet you at the doctor's office. I'm like, okay, cool. So I drive directly to the doctor's office. When my dad pulls up, Nathan is already sleeping. I mean, the drive from the school to the doctor's office is maybe 20 minutes. He is just passed out. He looks miserable. His little eyes are sunken in. My poor little baby. So I get his backpack and stuff out of the car, and then I pick him up out of the car seat. He wakes up. I ask him, do you want to walk or do you want mommy to carry you? I want mommy to carry me. And I have no upper body strength. I do not pretend like I do. And my child is a 45-pound sack of potatoes. So the struggle to get him into the building and then up the stairs, because the doctor's office is on the second floor, was quite interesting. But nonetheless, we made it without either one of my arms falling off. And then so we wait. Get in there, and we're waiting. They finally call us back. The staff was lovely, super grateful they were able to get us in. They do the test. I explained to Peanut what the test is going to be, that it's not going to hurt, but it's just going to be a little uncomfortable because they're going to use this big Q-tip to swab the back of your throat. And they confirms that, in fact, he does have strep. So, I already knew that was coming, right? I mean, yeah, it just was what it was. And I was just thankful it wasn't the flu, to be quite honest, because that's going around like crazy, and I have no interest in being a part of that at all. So they call him in a prescription. I get him loaded back up in the car. We head over to the CVS. I have to get him a new toothbrush because apparently with strep throat, the bacteria or whatever clings to your toothbrush. So I have to get him a new toothbrush, and I got him some apple juice, and so I run into CVS, do that super quick. They tell me it's still going to be about 20 minutes till his prescription is done. I said, okay, I'm just going to go through the drive-thru. She says, okay. So we get into the drive-thru. The drive-thru is around the back of the building. When I come around the corner for the drive-thru, there is a little white car directly in front of me, a blue van in front of them. In between the car in front of me and the blue van, off to the right-hand side, in a parking spot, is a little black car. And so I'm just waiting my turn in line, okay? And he's sleeping. I tell him, he keeps trying to keep his eyes open, and I tell him, buddy, it's okay to fall asleep. Don't worry about it. There's nothing you need to stay awake for. Okay, we're going to get to the glitters. We'll come back to the story. So here with the glitters, basically the way that you create this illusion of a glittery, for me it's a cupcake wrapper, but you could do this on a dress, you could do this, you could do this on a flower, you could do this on any surface, is a series of small dots. So I am there's nothing wrong with the card the way it is. The shading the way it is lovely. But as I've told you, I need to do the glitters because I have double stamped this. So you're going to do a small series of dots with every color. Because Copics are transparent, lighter colors will lift darker colors, and it creates that sparkly effect. So I use the Y02, the Y08, the YR24, the E99. I used all of them right on top of it. And I'm going to do this for all of the cupcakes with all of their colors. So I used 4 colors for each one to color them, and I will do 4 colors of dots. Not huge dots, little tiny dots. The tip of my marker was barely touching the paper. You can see how small these dots are. And I am at some point going to speed up this process or skip over some of it. Honestly, I edited and re-edited this video so many times, I'm not really sure which one I decided on. But in doing this, it's going to create a different type of texture, the look of a different type of texture on the cupcake holders. And you can already see, now that we're on our last color, that even without adding the final step, which really does make the big difference, that they are already starting to look like they have a different pattern or a different texture, a little bit more like sparkly. So I'm going to do that for all of the colors, the same thing that I just did. So I'm in line. The guy in front of me, after about 5 minutes, decides he doesn't want to wait anymore. So he pulls off. I pull up behind the blue van. I'm sitting there waiting my turn. Eventually, the guy who was up at the front moves. The blue van moves. I move. I hear a horn. I'm looking around, and the guy in the black car who was in the parking spot is making arms at me. Like, he's making arms at me, and I'm like looking at him through like the back passenger window, and I'm like, what? And he's like, it's my turn. That's my spot. And I was like, you weren't even in line, dude. I'm like, you weren't even in line. So I'm like, on any other day, I probably would have, when the blue van moved forward, I would have let him go around me because, like, I'm not looking for the drama. But also, I have a sick kid in my car who is half passed out, and the last thing that I need before I can go home and tuck him into his little couch nap is this prescription. So today's not your day, dude. And then that was pretty much it. He didn't like honk or have any other issues or whatever, but I just thought, how would you think? Like, wouldn't the time to honk be when I pulled up behind the blue van? Like, hey, I'm in line here. But that didn't happen. And also, why are you in a parking spot? But nonetheless, Peanut and I get home. And I asked him, do you want to lay in bed or do you want to lay on the couch? And he said, I just want to lay on the couch. He was pretty much asleep almost instantly. After getting his first dose of medicine, he did say he kind of had a headache, which is one of the symptoms of strep. So we did the combo ibuprofen, amoxicillin, and then he was pretty good. He slept pretty good that night, and then the next day he was almost completely back to normal. So thank God, not the flu. It was just like a crazy wild, like just a total mom day. That just, sometimes it seems like that's how it works out, those mom days. But we survived it. We survived it, and we survived strep throat, and I didn't get it, which is amazing, because he wanted me to sleep with him, and so I did. And so I was just breathing in a strep breath, because sometimes you just got to run the risk when you're a mom, right? So here we're finishing up the last blue one, and again, you can see that even just adding like those different colors works really well. I like outlining all of my images. This is not something that you have to do. I just like the bolder line that it gives. It separates it from the rest of the background. It also gives me a chance to connect the cupcake to the wrapper, because remember we talked about when I stamped it that they weren't connected. And you can just see the difference that it makes from this yellow cupcake to the ones that are next to it. So here they're all outlined. Now here is the final, the glittery step that's really going to make the huge difference. Is I'm going to do the same thing, adding those little series of dots, but I'm going to do it with a white gel pen. And this is really going to make it look like different parts of it are catching the light and it is glittering with the light that is hitting it. This is also going to be the best tool to cover up that little black spot I got from the double stamping. Even now, looking at the card, like as it's right in front of my face, I really cannot even notice it, and I know it's there. So I'm going to white gel pen all of these, make them all sparkly. And then I'm also going to add some white gel pen to the top of the cupcakes in the same little like sparkly matter, like as if it was that edible glitter you could sprinkle on little cupcakes. I'm going to do that, and then I'm also going to put some underneath on the gray, like as if they were sitting on the countertop and you were sprinkling the edible glitter, like how it would get on the countertop. I just thought that it was like a fun little addition to it. This probably looks like a birthday card, but it isn't. It could be for anything based on the sentiment. I did add actual glitter to everything because you know how I roll. So I used a clear glitter pen to add glitter to the top of the cupcakes as well as the cupcake liners. The sentiment is from the Sweet Treat set, and it says "For a Sweet Friend." So again, this could be, you know, just a hello card or a happy birthday or a thank you from a birthday. All of those things would apply with this particular sentiment. I am going to stamp this on black and then heat emboss it with white. That's my usual go-to. You guys know how I do. Because I love the black against the bright colors. I just do. And then once this is all melted, I'm going to trim it down into a label, add some foam tape on the back of it, and then I put it on the bottom right hand, like, well, I guess from the rule of thirds quadrant. And then I'm going to accent it with, it just felt very plain, with a couple of moonstone rhinestones from Honeybee. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate it always. And I will catch you on the next video. Bye.